Ladies and gentlemen,
Great.
I present to you the very first inaugural episode
There it is.
of the SYN Shop Podcast, ladies and gentlemen.
Woo.
We are rolling.
I am...
Whoa.
Ladies and gentlemen.
I cannot.
Who did that?
You know what? This is my first time here.
Come kids. All right, so just to introduce everybody from the end of the table, we have...
Akeem Patel.
And we have a special guest. We'll introduce you in just a second. And we have...
I'm Forge.
And I am the one known as Pong Jr. And you... and you... are watching the official SYN Shop podcast. We broadcast here from the SYN Shop every single Friday night from here going forward at about 7:40-ish from beautiful downtown Henderson, Nevada at 1075 Suite C, and that's on American Pacific Drive. And we got a couple of upcoming events. On Saturday, January the 25th, we've got our Danger Room tools and shop orientation. So if you would like to learn how to not cut yourself terribly on everything in the shop, that is the place to go. Also on Monday, we have the GNU Linux free software open source user group. That is on Monday the 27th. And on Tuesday night, we have a combo craft night and project night. But tonight, we have an interview with Ryan Dwyer, who has possibly one of the coolest titles ever. It's really good.
I can second that.
But yeah, he's from Woodbury Middle School, and he is known as the Bookmaster.
Welcome.
Yes, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So yeah, one of the reasons that we wanted to have you on for our initial stream, right, is this is our very first stream that we've done, right? And the thought came to me earlier. Well, not earlier, but when we were originally planning this, putting this stuff together, of the sloppy first copy. Because it's like, I don't have this ready, I don't have that ready, I need to get things moving. So that's what this is. Now, I don't know if we're going to have time to get to that topic later on. That might be one we throw in the bin.
We demoed that when we started.
We demoed that when exactly. That's the point.
Yeah,
that's the point. This is the sloppy first copy. It's kind of the concept of starting before you're ready to finish.
Yeah.
So at any rate, but we wanted to bring you in because as the bookmaster of the Woodbury Middle School, you are also the guy in charge of the 3D printing club, and you have just recently. How long ago did you start that?
3D Print Club has been going on now for about 3 years.
That's awesome. So what was it that started your gears turning? Like, I imagine how long have you been at Woodbury?
3 years.
Oh, for 3 years.
So from the beginning, it was one of my inaugural programs.
Very cool.
Nice.
Okay. So like right when you first walked in the door. So is that based off of a project that you were doing elsewhere?
Indeed, I did 3D printing at my previous school.
Oh, very cool. Okay. So what got you into 3D printing initially?
STEM is what's happening in libraries right now. So I'm a teacher librarian, and what a lot of people don't realize is school libraries and teacher librarians, they are avant-garde when it comes to STEM. It is one of the ways that STEM makes its way into our public schools. And so I'm sort of part of that movement of teacher librarians. So for me, 3D printing is what seemed, it just captivated my imagination. 3D printing for a lot of people, it sort of seems like something out of science fiction that has now become democratized and regular folks can have. So as a learning tool so that students can learn design and engineering, it really seemed like if you're going to start someplace, go big.
Absolutely. Okay. So why, I guess, one of the things that I've always wondered is it seems like right now we're getting into the STEM field. And at the same time, we're watching a lot of the jobs that STEM would benefit. A lot of those jobs leave the country, right? So now, we're leaving aside why and all those things, do you see future-wise those coming back as a result of like STEM programs, or can you I guess what I'm asking is the things that we're preparing people for today. Is there going to be room for everyone at the table later on?
I believe that we're headed in the right direction.
Right.
One of the strange things about education is that we're always trying to prepare people for jobs that don't exist yet.
Yeah.
So that's one of the odd things about being in education in this day and age. So when it comes to that, there's a big push for STEM jobs. As we know, we hear these statistics for engineering jobs, for computer science jobs, and there simply are not enough people to fill these positions. So there's a massive movement to get Americans better qualified and get in these positions. In particular, one of the parts of the movement I appreciate is like the code.org people, where there's a big movement to get people into this, to get girls into this, and to get people of color into fields that traditionally speaking have been white males.
Sure.
So, this is part of the STEM movement. It has to make an impact. Being on ground zero where all of this is happening and seeing the push that's happening, this has to be making a difference, or at least will, once, this current crop of students make their way out.
Interesting.
So I'm hopeful.
Yeah. Yeah. So we were talking beforehand about, some of the things that we were talking about for an upcoming class that we've got going on, and how one discipline can actually lead to several different ones, right? Where you might be just learning how to do 3D printing today, let's say, right? But in that, you're teaching three-dimensional movement based on numbers, right? So then that's a laser printer, a laser cutter rather. That's a shop bot, all these other different things use the same thing, right? All right, so are you finding the adaptation to other disciplines an easy thing to do for people once they learn the nuts and bolts of 3D printing? Like, do you see that as a transferable skill, or do you see it more as this is for 3D printing and we're done?
The ultimate goal and aspiration is that you're going to learn something and be able to build on it.
Absolutely.
All these sorts of skills, when it comes to being a maker, when it comes to being a tinker, you have to start somewhere. A lot of people are starting from nowhere. I consider myself to be a tinkerer. When it comes to being a STEM sort of person, I'm an immigrant. I'm not a native. When it comes to this, when it comes to my experience, temperament, sensibilities, propensities, I'm more of a language arts, sort of fine arts kind of person. So I'm, in a certain sense, I'm learning this as the kids are learning it. And what I'm learning is what the kids are, is you learn something, you build on that, and you expand from there. But you have to start somewhere, and you just take it one step at a time. A journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. You have to begin somewhere. So all of these things can connect and branch out. And the ultimate hope and goal is to be, for a young learner, to become someone who is well balanced, to become someone who eventually doesn't have to throw everything away in their home just because it breaks, but because they are able to fix it themselves. To come up with a person whose their idea of stuff isn't just related to what you can buy on Amazon, but to have things that you made by hand, that you learn how to craft, and that there's a certain meaning and a value in that that's greater than what you can do buying something in a store.
Do you find that so see, one thing that always gets me, speaking of that, the whole make it yourself thing, is the separation between the person who uses a thing from the people who make a thing, right?
Yes.
It seems like in our society that has gotten further and further and further. Like, here's what I mean by that. Let's say it's the 50s and we've got Stanley Tools and Craftsman and all those brands, right? Okay, so they go down to the factories and they're like, hey guys, we're making a new screwdriver. And they're like, okay, well, I really want the handle to be able to handle this and blah, 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 right? And so they can go back and forth with these guys and make the perfect handle to drive a screw, right? Contrast this with today's companies. A lot of them are, how can we get this for a lower price point? That is their goal. It's not that they're doing it badly. They're doing it correctly.
There's no other why in that situation. Yeah. Why is it this way? Because it's cheaper.
Bingo.
That is the solution.
Exactly. So that's one of the things that I really like about the maker movement is that you're moving that, you're democratizing that process. You're taking it back and you're giving it to the people and saying, here, take this and go do your thing. You see what I'm saying? And you're getting the makers closer to the users, which in my personal opinion is awesome.
to blur those lines together
Absolutely.
is a beautiful, beautiful thing. It hasn't really been possible until recently.
Right.
3D printing technology in particular is a lot of what has changed that, where the user can be the creator. All these things sort of overlap and intertwine with each other in a beautiful way. The world at times can be filled with such darkness, and we can see trends that we don't feel good about. But this is one part of the direction that the world is moving in that we can legitimately feel good about, that just feels like a win-win.
Absolutely. Yeah. Being able to bring that down to a point, especially now where you can buy a 3D printer for what?
Couple $100.
Couple $100.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So if you can go out and just for a couple $100,
Get a damn good printer.
get a damn good printer, exactly. Now you're able to take that into your own hands, and the barrier to entry is much lower.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So
And to add on, it's even lower
please.
than that, right? It's you mentioned before that you're starting up a program in your library, and that's available free to like all your students. It's the same as in public libraries. That's happening a lot as well. Like they're
That's
bringing
not
these-
even here. That's everywhere.
Yeah, that's everywhere. They're
Right.
bringing
I mean-
these tools available to everyone for free, like their community resources.
that's right.
Yeah, if you haven't looked up where your local library is, there's a bunch of resources. They might just have a makerspace lab, additive manufacturing, laser cutting. There's a lot of options.
Now we were talking actually about that before the show. I was talking about my 5-year cycle, and it seems like every 5 years I find out that libraries are doing something awesome. Like, oh man, I gotta renew my library card. Last time I renewed my library card was like 90. so
They expire, I think, after 1 year.
yeah, dude.
But you can walk right in for free. They'll
Get another one,
reactivate
yeah.
it.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure my old laminated card isn't going to get me anywhere these days. Like I'll have to bring it in sometime. But so now you are also mentioning before the show as a part of that though about how a lot of different libraries are significantly more than renting. I hear they're renting DVDs these days. No, I'm kidding. But that was 10 years ago, I think. But
No, that's still public libraries, Las Vegas, Clark County Library District.
Yeah.
They have massive storehouses of DVDs.
oh, is that right?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. People, when they talk about sort of the death of Blockbuster, people sometimes like hypothesize one of the reasons for that is because public libraries started carrying such large DVD collections.
Sure.
And that's still the case. You want your favorite BBC show that's sort of difficult to come across, or the newest blockbuster, you will find that in Las Vegas, Clark County libraries.
Very cool. Okay. So, and I imagine this applies to other libraries as well. We were talking earlier about how just about every library has not only rentals and stuff like that,
Yes.
but also STEM education as well. It enlightened me.
All right. So what I'd like to do is paint a picture of what sorts of things are happening in Las Vegas libraries. These are the sort of programs that are run by teacher librarians like myself. I think sometimes people think of me as running a 3D print program, and they think that perhaps I'm the exception to the rule. It is really not. Teacher librarians are avant-garde when it comes to getting STEM out into our students' hands. So here are a couple things. I'd like to paint a picture of just some of the things that are happening in Las Vegas schools. Cindy Baca at Escobedo Middle School. She has this gorgeous makerspace area in her library, beautiful carpeted area, snap circuits. She has kids making things with clay, duct tape. She has a Perplexus that's there. She has a Spiro, one of those little programmable balls that the students can use. The students can even use Vex robots in her library. Casey Giuliano is the teacher librarian at Mack Elementary School. She is absolutely phenomenal. To give you a sense, she doesn't even call her library a library. She calls it a STEM library commons. Now, there's debate about, do libraries really need to be rebranded, or can we really just redefine what library means? But she does amazing things. So to give you an idea, she has maker stations that her students visit every time they visit the library. She has a 6x6 Lego wall with all sorts of interactive stations that are on there, a marble wall runner, ID blocks, Oz robots, and sort of her big sort of claim is she does the Vex IQ robots.
Okay.
And her school, they're the current state champions. So these are the people who build robots and they compete, moving cubes around in other competitions. This all runs out of the school library.
Middle school?
That is actually an elementary school.
Wow.
So yeah, and you'll find a lot of things happening in our
trouble.
elementary schools.
I'm in big trouble. I hear this, I'm like, I'm in trouble.
Oh, and she's starting a hydroponics program that's going to run out of the library too.
Wow.
So
Okay.
if you think librarian is, old marm with the spectacles down here, like shushing people, that is not what Las Vegas school libraries are.
It's interesting you say that, and we should totally get to the rest of the list here in just a second.
Sure.
But I don't want to let go of this thought.
Oh,
here.
sure.
But you mentioned how it's not just the spectacles and all that.
Yeah.
It's interesting that there's been a couple of times that I don't want to go delve too far into this realm here, but there's been a couple of times I can think of like an incident. I think it was like 10 years ago, something like that, where there was a data being collected on library books.
Yes.
And the librarians were like, "Not on my watch. You're not going to do that." They open-handedly resisted that whole thing, and that's really awesome. In a way, the librarians are kind of the last guardians, of Prometheus bringing the fire, from the gods to the people. You know what I
What
mean?
a great image.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. That's beautiful.
Yeah. But so it's interesting to hear that they're not only the safeguarders of knowledge,
Right.
I'm probably going a little farther, but still. But they're not only that, but they're also the educators in addition to the school systems.
I love hyperbole. I love where you're coming at with
all
this. All right, some other things. Other things going on. Stuff happening in school libraries today. Glenda Alberti at Rono, she has makerspace stations, and her kids use these challenge cards to build things. Because we don't want to have, just because you have a makerspace doesn't mean your kids are doing something productive. It could just be play, and there is value on that, but she has it structured so that they're doing meaningful STEM tasks.
Do you have an example of those? That sounds really interesting.
Yeah.
You know what? I would have to ask her specifically what some of those tasks are. I couldn't tell you offhand.
So, well, here's something then from a like theoretical end of things here. So you mentioned how playing is good. Sometimes there's value in that.
Yes.
But sometimes you got to get some stuff done. How do you draw in your classes? How do you draw the line between, hey, we're having creative fun, and okay, you guys are screwing around now, quit printing butts.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it depends on what your goal is. Is your goal to give kids free times so they can play and tinker, or do you have an explicit objective that students are trying to create? I know that Glenda, in her situation, she has the anxiety that people are going to walk in and see this and think that, oh, it's just playtime that's happening. And no, it's not just playtime. They're doing structured STEM activities as they're doing this. So it really depends on what your intentions are. There are times for play where play is great. And, think of how many of the things that we do that we're good at. We tended to not learn how to do it in a formal class being taught. It was by playing. How did we learn how to use the internet?
Absolutely.
We didn't attend a class that taught us that. We had a computer and we spent hours and hours of time on it. And so there's a lot to be said for unstructured time as well. It depends on what are the parameters of your expectations.
So it's funny that you mentioned that, because it reminds me of a talk that I had with a guy I used to work with. And he was like, he comes into work, he's like, oh my God, my kids, they won't stop playing Minecraft. I was like, well, are they getting their homework done? Well, yeah, they're getting their homework done. They just, immediately after that, they finish their homework really quick and they start playing Minecraft. I'm like, okay, where's the problem with that? And the reason I bring that up is, we had talked a little bit about Minecraft earlier, but also, do you find that the explosion of that helped with STEM, or do you think the fact that STEM is being pushed in schools helped Minecraft? Like, kind of a chicken or egg sort of thing? Which one?
Yeah, I don't really know the answer to that. I can tell you that they work well together.
Yeah.
I can tell you that in having conversations with parents and their students using video games, a lot of parents don't appreciate that there are great learning objectives, strategies involved in Minecraft. Like you are building. Just because it's in the digital world doesn't make it, less valuable. You're still creating things. It's not a shooter.
Right.
You're actually building and still creating things.
It reminds me very much of like Legos when I was a kid, right? Like that, they are digital Legos with like another step up, right? Like they have their Legos, but then they have circuit design built in too.
They've got physics that play.
I know lots of people that learned like circuit logic through the redstone designs, right? And that's something I think that a lot of people don't appreciate, but they're learning a lot of stuff that's really very applicable towards a lot of STEM fields.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think a lot of it is really what is the goal here? Clearly, there's an enjoyment. They're having interest in playing Minecraft. What value can you get out of that? There's obviously something. It's a lot of, especially here at SYN Shop, when I learn to use a bunch of the different machines. It's not so much, hey, I need to learn this. It's, hey, I'm interested in it, so I am going to find out.
Yeah.
So I think it's the direction there is once they have an interest, then they can start processing and learning. You can't force them to be interested in something. But 3D printing, like you said, is one of the big things is you can make something out of nothing. So I think it's a great resource for getting people just started. And once you have the spark, that's when all the imagination, all the creativity, all the learning happens.
That's right. Yeah. And that's what I see the main drive of that being is the fact that you can here's a game where you have this whole world and you can go do your thing, and they learn independence from that. And not to mention, for going back to 3D printing, they're learning 3D location, right? Because they know I need to build along this path. Okay, here's my XY coordinates on the mini map, so on and so forth, right? So there's all kinds of different techniques that they're learning as a part of that. So something you said just brought the whole Minecraft angle up. But are you finding that crossover?
Well, I can tell you that a lot of my 3D print clubs kids, they're big Minecraft people.
Yeah.
In fact, when it comes to the designs that they create, if there is probably one category, one type of design that students like to create, they like to create either something from Minecraft or like they enjoy creating like original objects that could be in Minecraft but aren't.
Oh, that's cool. Okay. So then the next step is to teach them modding, so that then they're learning JavaScript.
Right. Yeah.
Or Java,
and this is it. What you talked about starting somewhere, having a foundation, and how once you have that foundation, you can branch out. But you have to start somewhere.
Absolutely. Yeah. Everything I know started originally with my dad bringing home a Commodore VIC-20.
Oh yeah.
So
I had a Commodore 64.
Excellent.
That was my first computer.
Very cool. Very cool. So yeah, we had. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm just impressed that you've got students using CAD. I mean, I come from the end of, I've been working in laser cutting and 3D printing for the last 6 or so years. And it's the hardest thing is getting people to use the technology because you have to learn a whole new world of design. And I mean, when you're working in engineering and manufacturing, that's the entire language that they speak in. So if you've got students using CAD, like what do you have them working through? So they're making obviously some character designs, but where is the ground level of that starting?
I give them free space. My sense is this is brand new to them. As you mentioned, you want to spark and ignite their curiosity. I let them design whatever they want to design. There was a time, sort of when I began 3D printing, when I worked in an elementary school, I helped to get that school's makerspace put together. And so I used 3D printing. I was running a Star Wars book club at the time. So their creations had to be something from Star Wars, keeping it related to our book club theme. But these kids have vision. They know what they want to create. So my sense is the best thing to do is set them loose and let their imaginations take them.
Just on like Tinkercad and just get them...
Yes, we go through like the basics. We go through the tutorials. And they create. In some cases, oftentimes, the first project is a little rough, a little undefined. anytime you're doing something new, you're going to go through a learning curve. But it's funny. I've had kids come on board. I never expected that create masterworks as their very first work. And I'm dumbfounded at the level of sophistication, complexity, and beauty of what students will create.
You know, that's one thing that's amazing about kids and about charging in before you're even ready to finish the sloppy first copy, right? Is if you haven't been told, and that's one of the great things about kids, and that's one of the huge advantages that they have, is no one's told them they can't. You see what I'm saying? After a certain amount of time, people get told, no, you can't do that. That's for professionals, or that's too expensive, or that's this, and blah, 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 blah. And then, okay, I guess I'll go work at the car wash.
There's a lot of that, expecting what you want the final product to be and being too intimidated to even try.
Exactly.
So,
yeah.
Man, kids will do it. They don't care.
yeah. That's amazing. So, so we had other, just to give a little mid-show thing, we're doing an interview here with Ryan Dwyer. He's from Woodbury Middle School, and he is the bookmaster. I really wish I had a gong. If I had a stream deck, I would totally have a gong.
Maybe in the post-production.
Yeah.
We'll fix it in post.
Yeah, or for those of you out there on the internet, just play it in your head.
There you go. Okay, so before I got off on the Minecraft tangent and all that, we were talking about some of the different libraries and the different programs that they have.
Sure. So a lot of people are surprised to learn that libraries are where STEM is happening. So a couple other things people are doing around the valley. Dorothea Scholler is the elementary at Berkeley Elementary School, and she does fantastic fairy tales with STEM. So this is how it works.
Super cool.
They will read a fairy tale, and eventually you get to the climax in the story, and instead of finishing the story right up, story stops, it's not being read anymore, and the students get out tangibles and they create objects which would help the main character to solve the problem.
Oh, wow.
So you are leaving literature and you are coming up with real world building to solve things.
Sure.
Sometimes this comes into, building little carts that, will glide across bookshelves, building walls. Like the kids come up with the craziest of things.
Yeah.
So, as librarians, we're traditionally the keepers of reading and literature, and that remains one of our goals and focuses. But that's a good illustration on how STEM can be combined with what we're already doing as opposed to replacing it, let's say.
Yeah, that's a really awesome idea. Because you're not just building like, hey, because when I was in school, like our craft program was like, there was one day where we got to make something out of clay, right? And I made my mom the crappiest dinosaur on the planet.
Was the dinosaur not an ashtray?
Yes, it was not an ashtray.
Oh, it was.
Everyone else in my class was making ashtrays. I was like, but my mom doesn't smoke. So I was one of like
Well,
five.
if you made her an ashtray, she might have started.
It wouldn't surprise me at all if I had. No, you know what? I did. I made my dad one. And he was like, but I don't smoke. And I was like, I don't know. They said make an ashtray. And so,
Wow.
but he used it as a change cup on his dresser. Yeah, for years and years.
The olden days.
Oh man, yeah, smoking in restaurants.
I think it's funny because I think I ended up making a dinosaur as well.
Is that
When I
right?
was a kid, and my uncle had it on his mantle for all the way through when I was in college. I remember
awesome.
they had it there forever.
Well, that is so cool.
Yeah.
Mine was supposed to be like the concept was it's kind of like a salamander sort of thing, and the pencils were kind of the spines on its back.
Oh, that's clever.
Right? Yeah, it would have been if the kilning process or whoever put it in may have squozen it slightly.
Yeah,
but it didn't hold pencils.
So,
I think one or two of the holes made it through alive.
I just want to comment real quick on the fantastic fairy tales things. The reason I think that's super awesome is I know whenever I read stories, I will often envision myself in them, and what a great way to tap into that and be like, what would you do as a hero?
Right.
What would you make to help you through that challenge?
Yeah.
I know a lot of people kind of envision themselves in the story, and that just taps right into it, and that's great.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're not saying here make an ashtray. You're saying solve a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which kids are natively great at.
Yes.
And that's what the job force is going to be. Solve a problem.
Absolutely. We got plenty to solve.
And that ties into the notion of trying to prepare our students to work the jobs that do not exist yet. And so how do you do that? Problem solving is one of the most important aspects they could have. Working in teams, problem solving. These are the sorts of things we get our students to do.
And not even that, just creative problem solving is something that you don't have. There's not going to be a clear-cut answer for every problem you're going to face.
That's right.
So making your own answer is going to be vital.
Absolutely, yeah. The one skill that has gotten me the furthest in my various IT careers is being able to use Google effectively. Number one with a bullet. Like, can you do this? Hold on. Now I can.
I got you.
Yeah. So you had.
All right. Yeah. So I just have a couple of them.
No.
So Debbie Berdini at Cram Middle School, she does Makers Monday. So Monday, this is a club that she runs after school, where kids are building and tinkering. They will make things out of duct tape on certain days. They've done things like make an unsinkable boat, but they also have sort of public works projects that they've done as well. For example, they've made dog chews that they donated to the SPCA.
Oh, wow.
They've made ornaments that they donated to nursing homes. So really neat stuff. Linda McKenna, she's at Keller Elementary School. She's also done the sort of fairy tale problem solving system, but she's also done things like when it comes to dealing with environmental issues, she'll have the kids work through like environmental spills, where like Caro syrup will get spilled, and the kids have to try to come up with a proper way to clean that up.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, and Jamie Harris at Smalley Elementary School, she has like all these stations that are out where there are microscopes that are out, and they do sort of a stop animation project where in library, they come up with a plot. In computer class, they film a couple things. In music class, they come up with music to put on it. And then once they come back to the library again, they sort of put the final dialogue and polish onto it. And these are the sorts of things that are happening in libraries. So I've painted for you, an incredible picture of what's happening in our school libraries. I would be remiss if I didn't miss the unfortunate dark side of this, because while you get the sense of all these amazing things that are happening in school libraries, at the same time, we are unfortunately choosing to defund libraries as time goes on. Unfortunately, the Clark County School District is dismantling and defunding and dissolving many of these great quality library programs that you hear. We have a name for this. We call this the quiet crisis. And we call it the quiet crisis because it's happening to such a great extent, yet people don't know about it. At around the turn of the millennium, pretty much every school library in the Valley had a teacher librarian. As of this school year, there are now 87 school libraries without teacher librarians.
Well, so what do they do?
Wow.
They do multiple things. Sometimes they'll have a clerk who works in there, maybe a parent who works in there, doing things like that. So imagine the sorts of things that I've talked about with what these teacher librarians are doing, which is very representative of the magic that is happening. And imagine with a parent helper, with someone like an aide, you're not going to have those things. Like me, I do my storytelling programs. I do poetry jam. I just worked with my social studies teachers doing GOB. All of those programs are eliminated. And so it's with that, that if for the people who are out there, if you've never heard of this, I encourage you to learn about the quiet crisis. So I'm going to do a plug for a URL where people can learn about this. Please visit tinyurl /quiet crisis. So that's tinyurl /quiet crisis. And that will explain the problem and what's happened and hopefully what we can do to turn things around so that we can have more schools doing this and having the programs that I've been talking to you about tonight.
So you laid out a lot. You touched a nerve with me. This is like near and dear to my heart right here.
People should be angry hearing this.
So let me make sure I understand the situation here. Okay. So you've got a program that is inspiring young kids to do the jobs that we need done here in America in the future, right?
Yes.
The shop classes that I had when I was a kid, those are mostly gone.
I never
Indeed.
had that option.
Yeah, exactly. So tech schools kind of shrinking significantly. Yeah. And so you guys are kind of taking on that mantle and doing it in a way that is the right, what I see at least as the path forward. I'm just some dorky guy on a podcast, but still, there's a lot of me out there. But the thing is, like, you're taking that, and that is being defunded. How's the football stadium?
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Do they have to have bake sales for new uniforms? I'm just wondering. No shortage there. I'm not trying to get you in trouble. I'm not trying to get you in trouble.
I suspect not.
I'll back off of that one. But yeah, so like that to me is a real problem because so it's tiny URL and so what our audience especially I'm sure is particularly leery of tiny URL links. Where does that end up at?
It takes you to the a place on the Clark County School Librarians Association webpage.
Okay.
So that's another way that you can find this. You can just Google Clark County School Librarians Association. I believe the particular URL is ccslaNevada.com, I believe. And once you get to the Clark County School Librarians Association page, you can click on Advocacy, and under that tab, you can get to the Quiet Crisis
Can
document.
you link that in the description of this video?
Yeah, I certainly can.
Oh,
Yeah,
I would
absolutely.
appreciate that.
Yeah,
Thank
no
you.
problem. Yeah. Well, yeah. So that must be a real struggle for you. It sounds like, for the most part, from what you've said, though, you at least at your school seem to be dodging most of that.
Yes.
Are you a public or a charter school?
Public library.
You are a public library.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
Yeah,
excellent.
Clark County School District.
Good. Because that's one thing I see a lot of too, is the whole charter school movement. Here
Yes.
we're just going to take all the money out of the public
Yeah.
schools,
Right.
and which leads to all the stuff that.
I would say the way I phrase it is I work at a real public school. I work at a school that does that takes all students. We work at a school that really cannot kick students out. Where when people think of public school, it's truly what we do. Charter schools, actually, to make a contrast, they really don't have. They don't have library programs. That is one of the great drawbacks. Charter schools do not have teacher librarians. So all of the great things that I've talked about tonight, painting those incredible pictures that teacher librarians are doing, none of those things are happening at any charter schools. So it really makes you think of that's worth your taxpayer dollars going into.
I was already against them before, but now I'm super against them. Charter schools.
Yes.
Yeah. So interesting. But yeah, and we the SYN Shop Podcast are not advocating for one angle or the other, but we are in favor of learning, and it does sound like what you're talking about is definitely pro learning. So so there you go.
Yeah.
You guys want to weigh in on the?
I don't know. I'm just really like I'm still just hearing this, and like it hasn't hit me yet, and I'm still I'm kind of shocked by it, because I remember as a kid, just even with my local public library, I didn't grow up with money to spend on anything. Like, my fun time is my mom would take me and we'd go to the library. They'd have like you said, storytelling classes, and it's really impressive how libraries are being such early adopters to new things, yet we still think of them as so old and outdated, that no one's really utilizing any of that.
That no one's really utilizing thing is actually like, it's so true. We've reached out to a lot of different organizations, and we're an old makerspace, so a lot of for this town. I think we were one of the first or the first.
I think the first,
And
if I remember.
Yeah.
So a lot of like places that started up makerspace have reached out to us to, get some feedback and talk about things. And one of the places was UNLV, and they did what you're describing. They started up a makerspace in the library, and we went and talked with them. And while we were there, like, they have this awesome space in their public library for all their students, and
No one
it's
knows
barely
about it.
used.
Yeah.
No one knows about it, or the people who know about it, like, they come in and they do one thing and then they leave. But like, it's like, I feel like there's so much more that could be done there. That there's so much use that students could make out of it, that they just aren't doing it. And that's kind of a shame.
Yeah, and I think part of that is, like you said, having actual like teacher librarians. In the school that I was at with our school library, it was just a volunteer student would be there just hosting the space, but they didn't bring it to the potential that it could be. And I think that's a lot of, UNLV, no one knows it's available. They're trying to get people there to be able to show you what potential it has. And if you lost the person that has that knowledge, you lose the value of the space.
Yeah. So how do you combat that? Because on one hand, you have to have all these programs in place, but on the other hand, you got to put butts in chairs.
Absolutely.
So how do you balance that out? Because it sounds like your program is pretty successful. Because we've got a tour, from you guys coming in in the next couple months. So how do you strike that balance between the two?
So are you asking, like, when it comes to working STEM into my program, or just the library program in general?
Getting butts in the library. How do you get people in the library? The problem that Forge lined up a second ago. We, at the end of the day, if you don't have people coming into the library, then there's more reason for some bean counter to come in and be like, oh, well, no one's using it, so I'm taking your money and giving it to the football team.
So it works on lots of levels. I have a good relationship with my teachers. My 6th and 7th grade ELA, like reading, English type classes, they come through on cycles every 2 weeks. So they come through during those 2 weeks. It is then that they check books out, and I do a lesson. And I may do a lesson on storytelling, poetry. I do, this week I'm doing lessons on cyberbullying. Cyberbullying is one of the things I push. Another lesson I do when they come in is digital addiction. A lot of the things that I teach students are things that if I didn't teach them, there would be no one else in the school who really teaches those sorts of things. So I have my regular ELA cycle like that. I also have a good relationship with my social studies teachers. They come in and we do conventional research. We have these amazing things called databases. They're like super powered websites like EBSCO and companies like that. And a lot of people don't know that we have these. Teacher librarians are sort of the guardians of these expensive resources that the state and the county spends a lot of money on. And so when we're doing a collaboration on a research project, I'm going to be able to help the teacher to work with that and, set up documenting information, how to do a works cited page, how to document things. I'll do a lot of things like that with both ELA and social studies teachers, sometimes working with my science teachers as well. The library is also open every day before school. I don't ever get a lunch. My lunches, well, I'll get to that in a moment. I'm also open after school every day. But my lunchtime period, I am running a second class during that. I'm running a class, like I don't sit down to eat. How many ever spaces I have in the middle of the day, I am running a program that, and it is there where I run my poetry jam program, where kids come to the library, they're exposed to different styles of poetry, and eventually they create and perform their own. And then I will drive those kids on a bus, sort of our school champions, from the school to the Valley-wide event. Oh, okay. And other times in the year, I'm running the Bristlecone Storytelling Festival, where kids in the 3 lunches will come down. We'll build up from the beginning. I teach them how to be storytellers. They pick a story in a book. The program has reading, writing, speaking, listening, viewing. It's an amazing activity. They eventually perform their stories in library, and each of these programs takes several months. Wow. And then eventually we get to send our favorites off to the regional event, which happens at our local Whitney library. So that's so those are some of the ways that I get kids coming into the library. I hustle. And another part of it too, when it comes to before and after school, is get the books that kids want. Be tapped into what kids actually read. At Woodbury, where I am right now, the mangas are incredibly hot. Really? So I give the people what they want. I want our students reading. So if it's what they're into, I will double down on that. So right now what's happening is manga. So that's how I get bodies. And I do other things too, like reset infinite campus passwords on the schools, like Google sort of director. So if a new student comes to school, they sort of have to reset their G Suite account. They come to the library for that. I bring people into the library any way that I can. I'm always hustling to get feet in to experience our beautiful library.
I like what I see where you're going with that, especially, you know, these multi-week, multi-month things, you know, because it's a thing that people are doing long term. It's not, hey, come on down and look at a book, you know.
Right.
It's like
Achievement at the end of it too.
absolutely, yeah, it's true, man. That is just amazing. So I guess then why was your school fortunate at? Oh man, okay, we got like 5 minutes left. Well, I didn't think it was going to be a problem. We were totally not going to get to sloppy first copy. So tune in next week for the sloppy first copy. But so how did you manage to dodge that bullet? Because it sounds to me like, you know, you've got these programs going. So how does one school accomplish this? And I'm probably giving you like a softball to totally brag here. But how does one school accomplish this, and other schools see their money and their teachers and their talent dry up?
I have 2 words that can answer that. Good leadership. When a school has good leadership, they get the mountain of research that says that having a certified teacher librarian in the school increases achievement within that school. I'm fortunate. I'm a school. My principal is Lakeisha Young, so shout out to her. She is fantastic and amazing. She gets it. She gets the big picture. She is a good leader. She is a good administrator, and she understands the research, and she makes it happen. Not all of her administrative peers have the same level of wisdom.
Wow. I've definitely been party to some bad management, historically speaking, in the past, and it's I can tell you firsthand. Oh, that sucks. Oh, but yeah, okay. Well, that is interesting. So what is the way? So if you have good leadership, so I guess really then it comes down to what does good leadership do that the people at other schools don't? Is it that we're not properly shown the value of STEM, or is it a situation where they're just like, no, the football uniform company gives me kickbacks, or like, you know, like I'm making stuff up here. I have no
really don't like the football team.
That, they just don't know where to devote their resources properly, or they're like, we want STEM, but like, no, you can't do this newfound hippie crap. You gotta.
Yeah.
Is it one of that? Because like I've seen stuff like that too, where they're like, that's too wild and creative for this school. We're not going down that route. We're going to do this tried and true.
Teach them calculus.
Yeah,
they'll love that.
Tried and true, like failed them for 20 years.
Right.
I think for every administrator, it's different.
Yeah.
There is a funding issue. The way it's sometimes described is cutting off a hand rather than a foot. That argument ultimately doesn't really stand up to me because there are plenty of good administrators out there like mine who find the money and make it happen. Yeah. I think some administrators, despite how dynamic and talented their teacher librarians may be, I think maybe they're still stuck on this idea of the old marm with the spectacles down at the bottom of the nose, shushing people, and haven't sort of upgraded, revised their notion of what teacher librarianship is. And sometimes it's hard to take old paradigms that we have in our head and update and revise those, even if that proof is right in front of you.
I can totally see, like, in my mind's eye, Jonah Jameson being like, what do we need all this money for these kids for anyway? All the kids are on the internet anyway. Cancel these libraries.
I can tell you for a fact that has happened. That was the exact reasoning for many things. If administrators don't appreciate all the richness that librarians bring when it comes to STEM, poetry, other language arts sorts of activities, there's this notion that students no longer read, and that's part of it, and that the only value.
What do they think the internet's made of? Words.
I know, and like my library, we have a significant collection of ebooks.
Sure.
Again, moving into the digital age, they don't get used as much as you might anticipate.
Really?
Print books are where it's still at. Just because we're moving into a digital direction doesn't mean, especially with young people, that they prefer to read on a digital device. Despite the fact that we're moving into that direction, most young people still prefer print when it comes to what they're going to read.
And a lot of it actually, like I I have conversations with my nieces and nephews and with like other young people I know, and like my friends' kids and stuff like that. And a lot of it is they may have a phone, but they have a tiny phone. They don't have like a good Kindle, right? Or like a tablet that they want to be reading on. And like a book is just nicer, especially like you said, a lot of them like reading manga, and the artwork doesn't translate well onto a small screen. So there's a lot to be said for like just having the artwork that you can flip through and look at it, and then lend to your friend if you want to really look at like that's a huge part of the appeal for a lot of them is like for me, like I love reading on my Kindle, but it's a $300 device. Like, a lot of most kids are not going to have that. It is a great reading experience, but I can read those same books on my phone, but that is not the same reading experience.
No.
Right? And I think like the kids see that. Like for them, they're like they can see just as easily that this is not as good a reading experience as reading it in a book.
I think also it's a matter of our lives are so connected now. I spend my job on my computer all day long. When, you do want to sit down, read a book, curl up with a nice book, you don't want to be on that screen. You don't want to still be tied to this life. So, I mean, just because it's changing doesn't mean the whole direction is changing. We're just adding more options.
That's interesting.
That's a good way to think of it.
They're very good at using their screens. Like, like they know how to use those devices better than like most people.
Oh yeah.
But that's not the only tool available to them. So if that's not the right tool, why would you use it?
I remember when I was younger and what was it, T9 typing was still the way. And I'm sitting here, my Generation X ass is trying to like say, I'll be there soon. And of course I'm old, so I have to have full punctuation, full words, all that stuff.
You and me both.
And this girl's in the record shop and she's just like, oh, hold on, I'll tell him. What are you saying? Blah, 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 blah. Like doing it one-handed, not even looking. Blah, 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 blah. I'm just like, okay, all right. Well, I need to learn how to type better, I guess.
Or you could call. Too old? Okay.
No. I'm there. No, I'm here. Just call me. What's funny is I started using speech to text. So what's funny is I talk to the phone. The phone tells my message.
It is amazing the amount of old people I see walking down the street yelling into their phones. And I'm like, are they on a phone call? And they're like, no, period. And they'll say comma. And then do the punctuation. I'm like, oh, they're just using speech to text.
Yeah, no, that's me.
Very common.
That's me. Yeah. I do that now because again, old have to have full sentences like CUL8R. No, I will see you later on. Or whatever. So like
a Vernon's typing motion is this. I'm like, what kind of phone are you using?
I have a.
It's a feature.
Yeah, Minority Report. I'm gonna store a file over here. Lift this thing up.
But anyways, overall, it just sounds like knowing what the best tool for the job is going to be like the ultimate trump card here. Absolutely. If you don't know what the tool is, you don't know that your library is there. Yeah. I mean, you don't have very many options at that point. So just want to say thanks for bringing all the opportunity, because even here at SYN Shop, people don't understand what they have available until they really get their hands into it. So
thank you for that. And I also want to thank SYN Shop. Because as you know, I run a 3D print club, and we are doing a field trip to this wonderful, wonderful place. We're doing a field trip to SYN Shop. So this is one of the many amazing services you guys provide. And by the way, I never would have gotten into 3D printing were it not for SYN Shop.
Oh, really?
When I first started to get into this, the mathematical problem solving part of the brain, that's not my strongest mental asset. I had a hard time wrapping my mind around 3D printing and how it worked. You can only read so many books and see YouTube videos where you just have to talk to a real human being.
Right.
You need to see and touch things. And it was coming down here to SYN Shop for one of your 3D print workshops many, many years ago.
Really?
Which was really the defining moment in my life. When it comes to me as an educator, knowing exactly what I wanted to do, exactly what I needed to get and move forward. So I'm happy to come on because in some odd, weird way, I kind of think of that as giving a little something back to you guys because you have given me so much and are continuing to do that by hosting my 3D Print Club kids for our upcoming field trip.
Absolutely.
Excited for that.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. It's interesting. Like we've closed now. Now with you saying that, we've closed every single loop that we started from the very beginning. Because in the beginning, I was like, "So when did you start doing it?" And we got off on something else, and so now we finally closed that loop. So that's awesome. Well, I mean, I can't. That's got to be it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. If
I think we're good.
I think we're good.
We can be here all night, but
Oh man, eventually I'd like to do like an after hours, like a post game type of thing. And in those, if you got me talking about that whole school funding thing in those,
if you want to hear my real thoughts,
oh boy,
there's a lot to talk about.
there is a lot to talk about. Absolutely. Well, fantastic. Well, thank you for joining us tonight. Again, this is Ryan Dwyer of Woodbury Middle School, the Bookmaster. That's right. All right, well, that about wraps it up. You can come on down to the SYN Shop any day of the week except for Sunday. Yeah. And that's Monday through Friday from 6 to 10, and on Saturdays from
3 to 10.
I knew that. I was testing you, and you passed.
PM both times.
PM both times, yes, yes. And we are, again, located at 1075 American Pacific Drive in beautiful downtown Henderson, Nevada.
I don't actually think we're in downtown Henderson.
No, but beautiful suburban doesn't really work.
It sounds better,
Beautiful
even if it's not entirely accurate.
It's not, exactly. Yeah. But, you know, that's what we do here.
The SYN Shop is the beauty. Okay.
That's right. And we are not entirely accurate. So, yeah. All right. So, yeah, I guess that about wraps it up for this. Again, thank you so much for joining us. And if you'd like to know more about the shop, you can head on over to synshop.org. Is where you can find information about that. Mm-hmm. And for information about several of the events that we have coming up, you can go to meetup.com/SYN Shop. And with that, this has been Akeem?
Yes. I don't know what you're after. Oh.
Outro.
Yeah. Good night and have fun.
Okay. That's Akeem. We got Forge over here. I'm Pong Jr., and you have been watching SYN Shop Podcast. The SYN Shop. Throw the in there somewhere. Sloppy first copy.
We'll fix it in post.
We'll fix it in post. Absolutely. Have a good night, everyone.